Namaskara. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this, and welcome to the second episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. This one's this one's a special one for me because the guest that I have on today, like Samantha, was on the first list of guests that I wanted to have on this podcast, and that guest is Teena Varghese. Tina and I met each other at the University of Central Oklahoma in 2018, and since then have been working together and have been really good friends. Um, we in this episode we spoke about dance, mental health, helping each other, and her belief system from her own perspective, because these were the things that sort of called out to me since I've known her, which is why I sort of tried to tap into that a little more on this episode. We also spoke about her being Indian American and the juxtaposition of that since she was young. And we also spoke about the weather, like I did on the first episode, because it was snowing that the day that this episode was recorded back in December. There's a lot of tidbits that I believe you guys can pick out from this episode and relate to. And I hope that this shows you all that there's a lot more things that we can find in common amongst each other, even though we're very unique to ourselves. So without further ado, I present to you Teena Varghese on the second episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Tina, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. How, what do you think about the weather outside? I know it's snowing here in Oklahoma.
It's snowing. It's really pretty.
Right.
I kind of wish I was outside, but then I know that I'd just be way too cold. So I like being here in the warmth with my cup of tea.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I was
So
being a little rude. I probably
yeah.
pulled you in and didn't let you enjoy out there.
No, no, you're good. You're good. This is good. Like I like my windows are open. It's like a nice view, and I'm getting to do this. It's a good
Right.
aesthetic right now.
Yeah, fair. It's bringing in that Christmas feel, that Christmas cheer, the end of the year feel.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So to get things kicked off or to get things started for the second episode of Perspective Platoon, I'm gonna ask you a simple question.
Okay.
Introduce yourself like you would to a random stranger, and make sure to sort of mention some of your likes and dislikes and what some of your future aspirations are.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I'm really proud of you for this podcast. I'm so excited, and
Oh,
thank you for having me on here.
thank you. No,
So,
I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being
yeah,
open to
of
being here.
course. Of course. Okay, so to introduce myself, I'm Teena Varghese. I go to college and I am aspiring to be a family life counselor, wanting to just help people out in their times of needs. I love to dance, make people laugh. I love to cook and just have fun with a lot of my friends and family. And yeah, I feel like that's my little elevator speech.
Cool. Are there certain things that you like and dislike about just things in general?
um, yeah, I really can't stand, and this sounds maybe a little maybe uppity, but like I just can't stand rude people, like really mean people. You
There's
know,
nothing
I feel
wrong
like
with
it
that.
takes yeah, I just feel like it takes more energy to be mean than it does to be nice.
Oh yeah,
So I'll never understand why people are just like purposefully rude and like probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah,
Just to bounce off of that, do
but
you think? Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
no, but I was gonna say, but I love people.
Right,
So like,
right.
but I love like hanging out with people, talking to people, getting to know their stories, and like
Mm-hmm.
just being like in a relationship with people, like having that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you said you don't like rude people, like, or you don't understand why people necessarily are rude, or like the
Yeah.
fact that it requires a lot more energy for them to be rude. What do you think contributes to that energy, so to speak, in terms of making people feel rude towards others?
I I think there's a lot of things. I think one is like how we grow up, like our environment that we are in, and like the people that we surround ourselves with. Obviously, it's very circumstantial
Hmm.
with what we go through in our lives. So I feel like as much as like I'm annoyed with people who are rude, I also have grace for them because
Yeah.
we just never know anyone's story,
Right.
like, and someone could just be having a really bad day,
Mm.
and or it's just someone's personal outlook on life, and hopefully like they can encounter people who are willing to kind of brighten their day or brighten their lives and like kind of give them a new perspective on things,
Hmm.
because it's just, I mean, honestly, it's kind of sad because you don't want them to be miserable their whole life, you want them to find some joy and find some light. So I think there's a lot of things that can come into play as to why people are just maybe rude to others, or maybe they're hurting themselves and it's an outlet for them to be rude to others instead of getting that feedback on themselves. So
Fair, fair. You said a lot of it is very circumstantial and might have a role to play in the way that they were brought up. Speaking of being brought up, being an Indian American, being or kind of living away from home,
mhm.
in a way, what was growing up over here like? And have you ever had moments where you felt like, oh, maybe I should have been in India compared to being here in America, or vice versa? Like, what
Yeah,
are some of the positives and negatives of that whole scenario of you being brought up over here?
I think anyone who is in the same boat as me can say that it is a really difficult task.
Hmm.
I feel like we're all in this gray area of like when we're here in America growing up, like in our elementary schools or high schools or whatever, we're seen as too Indian or like not American enough. And then when we go home to the motherland, when we go to India or like wherever our place, whatever country we're from, they're like, oh, you're too American, you're not Indian enough. And so you're trying to balance like this this weight of the world that's like so hard, because it's like, where do I fit in, where do I lie in between both places that I was brought up with, because I'm proud to say that I am Indian American, and I'm proud to be able to represent both cultures, but it is really really difficult to say the
Hmm.
least.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like you said that you feel like you're very much in the middle? Does that make you feel like this may be a bit of a negative question, but does it make you feel like you don't belong to either place and that you don't know where you belong?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
I think for a really long time I didn't feel like I fit into either.
Mm,
Even and it's sad to say, even like people here in America who are from Indian descent, like my friends who are Indian, or like aunties and uncles, and like if you don't know the language or you don't know it that well, like they look down upon you, and it's like,
yeah.
well, listen, I'm doing my very best. I'm
Right.
trying. I'm at least like attempting to speak, and I'm attempting to dive into the culture. So I think before I was definitely kind of like distraught about the whole thing, but now I feel like I'm in an area where I'm really confident about being American, but I'm also really confident about being Indian, and um, especially being in college, I've been able to kind of have an outlet to where like I can talk to people about my culture and be confident in how I was raised. Even though sometimes like the things that we do in India are so weird, like the little antics or like whatever, like how we were raised, like the way our parents do certain things. Like
Yeah.
people are like, "What? Like, wait a minute, you guys did that?" I'm like, "Yeah, but like that's our culture. That's what makes us us."
Right.
And so I think now that I've been in college and I've got to experience some things and be a part of certain organizations, and um, get to have opportunities where I get to talk about like the Indian culture here in America, it's been really nice to kind of be able to piece myself together and find who I am in between the middle of it all, and find people who appreciate it as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you spoke about how you get the opportunity to express both parts of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being Indian and being American.
Mm-hmm.
How does that? How is the how did that
Mm-hmm.
help you sort of grow into the person that you are today?
Um, I would say that's a really good question.
Thank you.
First off, um, I think growing up, there weren't a lot of people who appreciated me being Indian. They were just, it's just another girl, or she's a brown girl, or she's an Indian girl, whatever. Um, but then coming into college, or even kind of the end of my high school career, like I said, I really dived into my culture and kind of expressed it. And so people who took notice of that, or really, would come up and be like, "Hey, like your outfits are really pretty," or "the way you guys dance is just so amazing," or "the food that you guys have is like really delicious." And like for me, it made me feel proud of my culture, not something that I had to hide away or shy away from. It made me want to express it more. And then being a part of the Indian Student Association here on campus, um, I was able to kind of dive into that. And I will say my freshman year, I kind of stood back from it a little bit because I really didn't know how people would associate me or how they would view me, just because like, oh, like I'm only a part of like the Indian Student Association, like, she's just the
Mm-hmm.
Indian girl. But that's not what it was. And it was really beautiful to see how, being a part of the association and growing from it all these past years, people were just like, I love it, I love the culture, I want to be a part of it, I want to, come to these events, I want to learn more, I want to educate myself. And I don't know, I feel like people who are willing to put themselves out there in a situation where they're not knowledgeable about it but wanting to learn more, especially when it comes to different cultures, is a beautiful thing, because that just means that people are willing to educate themselves, and that they're willing to learn and like go outside of their comfort zone and go outside of the box of the norms. So I don't know, I think knowing that people are willing to do that makes me want to do more on my part.
Mm-hmm. Fair. So you want to offer as much as you can to give people that opportunity to sort of learn and sort of get to dive into
Mm-hmm.
Indian culture and everything else that's associated with
Yeah,
India. Yeah,
yeah, for sure, for
yeah.
sure.
Um, Based off of what you just said, through being involved in the Indian Student Association and things like that, both you and I know, and our mutual friends know, that a big part of that is dance. And
Yes.
how people came, a lot of people from different parts of the world for that matter. We've had a Danish person and people from
Yes.
Kazakhstan and things like that sort of join in and learn the Indian way of dancing, for the lack of a better way
Hmm.
of putting it.
Yeah.
So dance is very much a huge part of you as a person, or your
Hmm.
personality. Do you remember the first time you danced, or do you remember the first time you sort of came across dancing?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Do you
I
want to
do
talk about it?
remember. Yeah.
Okay.
I do remember the first time I did a Bollywood performance, which
Uh-huh.
is my first time like I ever like actually danced and like performed in front of a crowd. Um, and it was, we had our very first, well, not our very first, it was our second international night in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And a girl came up to me and some other girls. So my freshman year, there was a lot of like Indian girls. Granted, like we were like a group and like we all hung out, but um, we were all hanging out, and she came up to us and she's like, "Hey, would you guys want to do a Bollywood dance for international night?" And we were like, like I don't know, because again, early high school, didn't want to like ruin my identity or who I was as like, you know a high school student. I don't want to be viewed as the Indian girl, or
Right.
like, anything like that. And so I kind of was hesitant, but we were like, you know what, why not? Sure, like it's gonna be a group of us, let's go for it. And I remember we just picked some songs that, some of the other girls might have danced to at like weddings or something like that. So like they were already choreographed, we were just practicing. Again, I had no prior like dance in me, like I had never done dance before. I It was my first time, and I just remember going to practices, and like we were like hardcore about it. We were like, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to practice, we're like setting dates, we're gonna have these outfits, like we need to figure out all this stuff. And now looking back, we really relaxed about it, because now how I do dance and do practices and all that stuff, I'm like much more hardcore, and I was really laxed back then. But
Mm-hmm.
I do remember the day of the performance, and it's just so funny to me because I remember we were doing the dance and like we were so excited. As soon as the dance was done, we were like, "Yes, this is the best thing ever! I can't believe we did it!" And like I look back at some of these rehearsals that we had, and like it was awful. It was god awful. Like we really thought we were doing something on
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Mm-hmm.
We were not. It was not pretty. but I'm very thankful for that because that was kind of like the domino effect, like that started my dancing career. And from that moment, we started doing dances every year until I graduated at International Night. And honestly, it was one of those things to look forward to at International Night in
Mm.
high school. Everyone was like, "Oh, we know like the girls are going to do a Bollywood dance." And what was really cool is we started something that is now still continuing at the high school. The girls are still constantly doing the dances for International Night, which is really cool that we were able to start something now, like, years later, it's still there.
Yeah, yeah, that is beautiful. I would have thought that you actually started dancing a lot earlier, not just freshman year of high school. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that was
'Cause
that was the first year. Yeah.
Because for me, I think I started dancing when I was like 4 or 5, and my parents sent me like to this dance class, and I sort
Uh-huh.
of that was where I sort of gained a liking for it. And I mean, as dancers, I think like dancing gives me a lot of joy, gives you a lot
Hmm.
of joy too, based off of
For
the way you
sure.
just spoke about it. Um, Based off of that, like, do you think for you dancing is more about a performance, or do you think dancing is more about just enjoying what you're doing and sort of expressing you yourself as a person through dance?
Both.
Hmm.
I don't think I would be doing dance if I didn't enjoy it.
Okay.
Because I think I'd be more stressed and angry and
Hmm.
annoyed
Yeah.
if I didn't enjoy it as much as I do. Um, I just really, I really just love being able to like take the music and like let my body just kind of move with it and like not feel like being so restricted and like getting that creative like that creativity and being able to move to music without setting boundaries for myself. Or and it sounds kind of funny, but like almost like not letting the world tell you like what you can do with your body, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? um I feel like dance is that outlet for people where they can do whatever they want to do because it's their body and like it's how they want to move, and it's the music and you feel it and you vibe with it, but with that being said, I love doing performances because I love, like I said, showcasing that. And I love entertaining people. I think from a really young age, I always knew I was a was somewhat of an entertainer, and I always liked making people laugh or making people happy when I was doing some type of entertainment for them. So
Hmm.
um, I think it's a mix of both, and I can't even express how much I enjoy doing it.
Hmm. Hmm. That is fair. Because I think a lot of the time, sometimes if it's just like you said, if it's just turning into this thing about it being a performance, it can take away from that sense of enjoyment, and you
Mhm.
don't necessarily enjoy what you're doing, and there isn't much sort of happiness coming out of it. It just feels like that drill that you need to sort
Right,
of do, um,
right.
to sort of just showcase and sort of get done with it and move on. Um, you said that it does both for you. Um, in terms of joy with dancing, do you notice yourself dancing in random moments where you don't know, like, for example, like, just to sort of give some context, I think that way I can frame the question a little better. I find myself dancing to random songs playing in my head, either while I'm at research lab or while I'm working or whatever it is, or maybe in the shower. Too much information, but you know what I mean. So, like, do you
Oh,
catch yourself? Do you catch yourself doing things like that?
1000%. If I'm not dancing, I'm sleeping. So let's put it that way.
Okay.
Like I am like constantly moving. Like when I'm cooking, like
Uh-huh.
I'm just like mixing, but like I'm like
Right.
dancing while I'm doing it. Like I could be my roommates know this. I like if I'm like standing in front of the fridge, like trying to find like a snack or something, I'll just be dancing in the fridge, but not thinking about like what I need to get. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like just like wasting electricity.
Right.
Um, fun fact, like half of like the choreography that I come up with or think about, I'm doing in the shower. So like same, maybe too much information, but like that is like my spot where like I like figure out like what I like, what I don't like. Probably not the safest place.
Oh yeah.
I have
Oh yeah.
slipped a couple of times,
Oh
but you
yeah.
know what? I'm still here today. I'm fine. So,
Mm-hmm.
it works out. But yes, I am like I said, if I'm not dancing, I'm sleeping or eating. So
Right,
like,
right, right.
yeah, I'm always on the move.
Yeah. Um, in terms of dancing, do you feel like you've ever had any, well, I guess backlash is the wrong word, but have you felt some sort of resistance from family? I mean, I know you're still expressing your culture, but
Hmm.
has there been moments where you felt like there was some sort of resistance from those aunties and uncles? Maybe if you were doing more westernized sort of dances compared to Indian styles or et cetera, et cetera. Have you had those moments ever?
So when I first started dancing back in high school, I was really nervous. I
Mm,
was really um, just because of like going to church and stuff like that. I didn't know how those aunties and uncles would feel, and I didn't know how my parents would feel. And obviously, you know, being in the Indian culture, everyone's like, what do other people think? And so I was really nervous about what my parents would think and how they would view it, and if they would be even willing to let me do it again. And oddly enough, like they were really excited. I remember the first year that I danced, they weren't actually able to come to the performance, which was totally fine. But the second year I danced, I was losing my mind
mm-hmm.
because they were coming and they were going to watch me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what they're going to think. And I, and I just remember afterwards, my dad came up to me and goes, that was really good. And I was like, thanks, dad.
Right.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And so, like, now it's like transformed into like anytime I'm performing, they're always here, especially since I entered college.
Mm-hmm.
They're always at my performances. Like, I mean, you've seen them too. Like,
Yeah.
they're just like sitting there and they're like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
they're really
Yeah. Yeah.
excited. And um, like, even like just like the small things that we've done. And like my brother, like at the end of his college career, he started dancing too.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were like, yeah, let's go, let's watch him. So like they've been very good about embracing that.
Yeah.
I will say I personally haven't heard anything from anyone, any aunties or uncles, and I haven't really experienced anything. But that's not to say that they probably aren't talking behind our backs.
Fair.
But
Fair.
you know what? It's my life, so it's not
Right.
bothering them. It shouldn't be
Exactly.
bothering them. So
Exactly. 100%. I agree. I agree. Because, like you
yeah,
said, I think that sense of wondering what other people might think is a bit of a disease that we have in Indian culture, which is
for
quite
sure.
unfortunate because I think you should be able to do what makes you happy, right? And
Hmm.
even if you make a mistake out of it, hopefully you can learn and you can not do that again and sort of correct yourself.
Yeah.
You mentioned how before or the first or second time that your parents were coming to see you perform, you were quite nervous or you were sort of losing your mind. Um, but in your college life, you've been quite an advocate for like mental health awareness through dancing. So I find the juxtaposition of that quite interesting. So talk to me about like the progression from losing your mind because of having to perform to sort of using that aspect of performance and dancing with people and the joy associated with it to increasing or improving or well talking to people about mental health, increasing mental health awareness.
Yeah. So let me first off say that that doesn't mean like even now to this day I will still get butterflies.
Oh
I
yeah.
still like feel like I gotta throw up for performances. It never will go away. It'll
Mm,
never go away.
yeah.
But I will say using the platform that I had going into doing performances and talking about my platform of mental health awareness through the arts, I really wanted to use dance as kind of like a gauge to a gateway to what it could be, and talking about mental health, just because one in the Indian community, it's so taboo and no one wants to talk about it and no one thinks it exists. We always make it up in our heads, and it's nothing that you'll be fine. Is basically
Right. Right.
what our parents or aunties and uncles will say. And so I always found for me that my happy place was dance or some type of art form or some type of creative outlet. And so for me it was mainly dance, but like I mean any other aspect. Like I love cooking. When it was like finals week, I would stress cook. And so like instead of like studying, I would be cooking. So like like I felt like that was an outlet. People who cook paint, people who sing, people who act,
Mhm.
poetry, storytelling, just I mean any outlet possible. I wanted people to embrace that, and know that, excuse me, and know that that was okay. That was an okay outlet, and that was good for you. It's healthy for you to use that, and not to shy away from that. And so I also wanted to show that our mental health is so important, and we need to find any way to help ourselves out, right? Because
Right.
we always want to be there for other people, but how are we supposed to be there for others if we can't help ourselves?
Hmm.
And so, I think it's really important to figure out what you like or what we like, and what makes us happy at the end of the day, and how that's going to help us, and ultimately how that's going to help others. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Because like a lot of the times we try to help other people out, but then I don't know if this is a saying or this is just something I'm coming up with in my head. But it's like you need to be able to fill your own cup before you fill somebody else's cup,
mhm.
in terms of like helping people out
Yes.
and things like that. So yeah, finding that happy medium in your head and then being able to give, I think is it's way more beautiful, because then I don't think you feel like giving people is draining you out necessarily. So I think that's
Hmm.
really beautiful that you experience that through improving mental health awareness. You mentioned briefly about how Indian
Oh my god.
culture. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. I was just gonna ask, like,
Yeah, no, you're good.
I was just gonna ask, like, how, I mean, you mentioned how Indian culture has a sort of stigma towards mental health. How important do you think it is for you as a person to be able to sort of bring that up to the forefront, because of that background as of being Indian? Like, how important is it to sort of make people aware that, yeah, this is the thing, and that we should be more aware of people who are going through this? Only then we can be able to help them. Why do you think that's important, and why do you think you should bring it up?
Um, I think it's so important. Talking from a personal perspective, I feel like still to this day, I don't have as good of a support system as I wish I would have had, starting
Mm,
when I figured out I was struggling a lot. And I'm slowly getting to that point where, like, I feel like I can talk to people and reach out to people. And again, that's probably because it was so ingrained growing up. Like, we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk
right.
about depression or anxiety, or like any other thing that we struggle with. Stress and all that stuff, especially at this time, like, as we're college students, it's,
Hmm.
where we have class, we have work, we have, even for those who are parents and that are going to college, and they're, like, having to take care of their kids, their families, working full time, maybe having 2 or 3 jobs while still being in school. Like, that is such a big workload. And so I feel like in the Indian community, it was just never really expressed how hard it can be. And I, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that our parents have struggled with depression
Oh
and
yeah,
anxiety and
100%.
stress and trauma and all sorts of stuff. But I'll have to give it to them. I give props to them that they've just kind of maneuvered their way through and just have kind of trugged along and have just done their life. But I think times change, people change, and we're in a new era where things have just are so fast paced now, with
Right.
technology rising and stuff like that, and the interactions we have with people. And I think it takes a toll on us.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's so important to be able to talk about it and express ourselves, because I feel like at the end of the day, if we're not being open about ourselves and, like, not denying that we're going through something, then we can ultimately progress as a person, we can progress as a community and progress as a society. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Just because we're holding ourselves back when we
Yeah.
when we don't talk about our mental health, and we don't express it, and we don't tell the people we love, and how are we supposed to help ourselves, if we can't talk to someone and have someone kind of be our accountability partner, or have someone be there to check in on us. And so I think it's, for me, going into college and knowing my career and what I wanted to do was to counsel people. You know, I always thought of it as, I'm going to be probably one of the first couple of people within the Indian community that might have to try to start tearing that down that wall and get a bunch of backlash from people.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully, in like 5-10 years down the line, the new generation that rises up, they're going to be the ones that are just going to like knock it down, and like they're going to be able to like really help the mental health community and be able to see a new future for that, especially within the Indian culture.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sort of paint Indian culture with a bad brush necessarily, but
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
yeah, because like a lot of the times, at least, well, I personally would say, and I think based off of the way you just talked about it, you've had some sort of support in a way that hasn't put you into
Hmm.
um, like that corner of feeling like there's nobody for you. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong when I'm saying that, but
Hmm.
a lot of the times I think because of that stigma, it's very easy for people to like not give a damn, like you said. But yeah, hopefully with our generation sort of speaking out about it a lot more, hopefully the generation after us, like you said, can sort of find their ground. Um,
Yeah. And I wouldn't
Go ahead.
say, oh, sorry. I
No, go
wouldn't
ahead.
say that like I've fully have figured out where or what I can where I can find people, if that makes sense. I think I'm still learning
I think we
to
all
actually
are.
reach out to
Yeah.
people to reach out to people. It's so hard. And like
Mm-hmm.
I hope that whoever listens to this, if they hear like, reach out to someone, but know that it is still difficult. It's not going to be an easy process because we don't like being vulnerable. We don't like talking to, I feel like a good chunk of us don't like talking about our feelings, or we don't want to put that burden on someone else. And
Mm-hmm.
that's me. That's the type of person I am, because ultimately, like, as although I have a lot of burdens of my own, and I want people to tell me about theirs, because ultimately I want to be a counselor and I want people to tell me their problems. I want to be able to
Right.
help them out. It's hard for me to do that for someone else, for me to express myself and talk about what I'm going through, and say, I'm struggling with this, and I have anxiety with this, and I have all these problems, because I don't want to put that on anyone else. But it's a learning process, and it's definitely kind of getting easier.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. Like I said, it's a learning curve, and you just gotta roll with the punches. But
Right.
yeah.
I think a lot of the times with finding your footing to improve your mental health, it's kind of like a trial
Yeah.
and error sort of thing. You
Hmm.
have to do different things to sort of see what makes you feel better, what doesn't.
For sure. Yeah.
Like you said, like I do, I talk about my problems to other people too, but sometimes I feel like the easiest way for me to do it is to just journal. So if
Hmm.
anybody out there is struggling, find people like
Yes.
Tina said, or just buy a journal, or just find a notebook that you can write your feelings into. That's one way of
For
letting it
sure.
out, letting that
Yes,
steam
I
out.
highly recommend that, because
Yeah.
I don't like writing, and I've only recently been starting to do that, but it's like very minimal. It's like once in every 4 or 5 months,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still an outlet. It's still really good for you.
Right.
Even vlogging,
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a little bit. I did vlog for a little bit, and I'll still go back and I'm like, man, who was she? Like, she was really sad.
Yeah.
She was really, really sad. And like, it just shows like the progression, and like at that point, that's like a really good time to reflect on your life, and like I think you should always take time in your within months or within weeks, and just reflect on the past couple of times or past couple of weeks that you've done life, and see what was different, what changed, who entered your life, who left your life. And
Yeah.
so journaling is a really good thing, vlogging, whatever you can do to like maximize like being better for yourself, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of the times I think with mental health, a lot of it is about letting things go. Because
Hmm.
I think a lot of it might also be associated with us overthinking about how something might happen or what someone might think about that thing that you do, and there's just
Hmm.
a billion things that sort of like just cook themselves together in your head that sort of lead to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, finding an outlet definitely helps in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Yeah, for sure. You spoke about how you wanted to become a counselor and you wanted to sort of like talk to people about the problems and their problems, and you're open and welcome to having them come and talk to you. Um, in that sense, like it is a form of service, I would say. Wouldn't you? Do you think so? It is a way of serving people.
To a certain extent, if I wasn't being paid.
Okay.
I feel like what I do now, when people do come and talk to me and ask me about their problems, or like need an answer, or need just someone to listen to, um, obviously, yes to answer your question. It
Hmm.
is an act of service.
Yeah.
I don't like putting service with payment like as
Yeah.
my career. If that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Right, 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 right,
But
right,
yeah.
right. But well, I guess a better way to frame that question is like, because you've chosen that, since you've chosen that as your sort of career goal, um, I mean, to me at least, it makes it seem like the payment doesn't matter as much compared to the
Right.
the fact that you're being able to serve, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I should
Yes.
have framed
There
it
we go.
that way.
Yeah.
There we go. There it is. There it is. Hey, we're
You're
still
good. No, but
trying.
I get
This
what you're
is
saying. Yes.
right. This is just the second episode. Hopefully, my
That's
question
okay. Hey,
asking will get better.
that's totally fine. I get, but no,
Yeah.
yes, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Um. Why do you think, from a personal perspective, what about service is it that makes you feel better? Like, does it make, because I mean, I'd assume that it makes you happy to a certain extent, because if it doesn't, then you wouldn't do it. So,
Right.
right. So, what about service is it that makes you happy as a person?
That's a really good question, and I feel like I don't have a good answer for that. I think
Whatever
like
you
from
feel.
a I feel like from a really young age, like I've always just been the type of person to like just help people out, like no matter what
Right.
the situation was. Like it's really funny because just like within the past like year and a half, because I want to be a family and marriage counselor. And
Hmm.
I was, like I was always like, I mean, I don't know why, like I was just really wanted to do like family marriage, like couples and stuff like that. And I was really reflecting back on my life, and I remember when I was younger, I always wanted to be a love doctor, which now I realize I would think I wanted to just be a dating coach, or like
Yeah.
or a marriage counselor. I think that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, that was just yesterday. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, this is too much information,
um,
I guess, but you've been my love doctor for a few times, so
yeah, see, I'm always here.
and I appreciate
MD,
that about
Teena
you,
Varghese,
right?
MD.
Yes, for sure, for
No,
sure.
but I remember being younger. Like, this was like kindergarten,
Hmm.
and one of my friends, God knows how this happened, but she had a boyfriend.
Okay.
And they were both in my
Kindergarten?
class. Kindergarten. Kindergarten. And she was one of my really good friends. The guy
Uh-huh.
was one of my best friends. And like she was like, oh my gosh, he's being so mean to me, and he's like not talking to me, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And she was like, can you please go talk to him? I said, say less. So I remember being on the playground. She was on the swings and she's telling me all this. And I go and they're playing like Foursquare or something like that. And I go up to him and I'm like, bro, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you need to go talk to her. She's like really upset. Like, and I just remember like talking, like doing relationship like counseling at like age 5, and like
Right.
talking about how they just need to communicate, because communication is key in
Oh yeah.
any relationship. And
100%.
so knowing that I did that at such a young age and like reflecting on it now, I'm like, wow, like God really like put things into perspective for me, and like maybe this is what I should be doing and whatnot. But um I feel like I've always just been the type of person to help people out. To go back to your
Mm.
question, I just
Right.
like in school, like I always wanted to help the teacher out. Like if I saw a classmate struggling, like I would always just try to like go and be like, hey, like what can I do to help? I might not have the right answer, but
Yeah.
um, I'd always want to volunteer to like help clean up the classroom or whatever. And just I just really enjoy, I guess, being with people, and like any opportunity you get, I feel like, to volunteer or to get that service time, like you're getting to know people, like you're getting to meet new people, know them, talk to them, and just like, have an experience in your life, and I feel like that may be where it stems from.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fair. Fair. I had a couple of questions pop up in my head. I don't know which one to go with first, because we're still learning. But
Throw them
okay,
all
I'll
out.
go right. I'll go with this one first. You said how it sort of gives you the opportunity to meet people and sort of get to be involved and sort of do a lot of things with that. Um, Maybe this is a deep question in some ways or another.
Go
Um,
for it.
do you think that service and helping people, um, if not from your personal standpoint and a general standpoint, and do you think that sometimes it can get clouded between seeking some sort of gratification from people rather than being happy yourself for the fact that you're being able to serve? Do you think that can get muddled a lot sometimes?
Yes, and I think it has for me a lot of the times.
Oh yeah, same here, same
And
here.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, being super transparent. I think when like I mean, I think at a young age, like I said, like I was always helping people, but I didn't think too much about it. And
Mm,
then I think as you get older, like and you keep doing this and like I feel like knowing people are like, oh my gosh, Tina, thank you so much for like all this help. Like you kind of want like that like reassurance, like that, affirmation of like affirmation, yeah, like of like
yeah.
knowing like you're doing something to help someone out. Like you're like you're meant for something,
Right.
and so I definitely think at some point or another, like we take that and like what we really love doing and like the good that this has over like kind of wanting validation and stuff like that and putting it together, and that's not really a good mix. I think it's sweet for people to like say stuff, but like I think ultimately our goal should be to help people and not seek
Right.
validation from what we do, you know what I mean? And like we all have gifts and talents, and we should all be using them in a way that's not helping ourselves but helping others,
Mm,
and for me, like I know like God has gifted me with talents and just values to instill in others, and I don't want to do anything for my own glory. I want it
right.
to glorify him and to glorify the work that he does through me.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And again, you're always learning, and I'm never going to
Right.
ever say like I'm perfect and like I've never
Hmm.
done it. I literally could probably tell you something that I did like last week or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But like I think as long as you have like that motive in your head that like like this is not for my own satisfaction, this is to truly help someone else and like make sure that they're on a good path and like they're well on their way after like I've helped them out with whatever service that like I've helped out with, that I've helped them out and I didn't help myself out, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I think it's
Yeah.
making that distinction between helping for the sake of just helping rather than helping for the sake
Mm-hmm.
of seeking that sort of affirmation or gratification. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and like
Mm-hmm.
the driving force for help or for you helping other people shouldn't be the fact that you will get something out of it. It should
Mm-hmm.
be the fact that you want to help people.
Right.
And yeah, that's something that I've been sort of discovering myself too. And I've been trying to sort of like make that a part of the way that I think, even when I help people, is to not expect anything. There's a saying in Hindi that I heard from a
Yeah.
person. It's called "neki kar or darya mein fake," which basically means do good and then just throw it away. Like, let go of it. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Don't sort of expect anything to come out of it. Be happy with the fact that you've been able to help that person out. If
Yeah.
it's helped them, great. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
get anything back from it, that's fine. Like
Yeah.
you don't
You
need
did your
to.
part.
You did your
Yeah.
part. Exactly. You've done
Exactly.
your duty, and sort of be happy with the fact that you've done your duty.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
think like a lot of the times I feel like people who do help or people who do go out of their way for someone always, not always, I feel like I'm being a little negative there, but I feel like a good chunk of the time people always want to expect something in return.
Hmm.
And I feel like you'll only be satisfied once you like are happy with what you do. You know what I mean?
100%. I agree.
You do it and you're like, man, I felt good about doing that, and
Hmm.
like it's like that. There's not a second thought in your head of like, okay, I hope like this person says something to me, or I hope I get something in return, or I hope people were watching and they saw all of the stuff that I did, because like honestly it's not going to get you anywhere in life. Like if you're always seeking that validation, like you should be happy and content with yourself, and
Right.
knowing what you did was helpful in someone else's life is I think it's beautiful and I always enjoy it. So
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Um, I mean, but it's a constant it's a constant process, because I think a lot of
mm-hmm,
the times, because of how materialistic the world is, I guess,
mm-hmm,
for the like I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita a lot recently, and the way that it distincts sort of the joys that we seek is material and spiritual. And yeah, like I think seeking that sort of external
Mhm.
validation and seeking something out of seeking fruit for your activities is sort of like a material way of seeking joy. That's not
Mhm.
necessarily always going to be possible. So you have to kind of find that happy medium of
Right.
being happy with what you do. Um, so for you as a person, you said you've
Right.
always been helping
Not to say
people.
that having a little
Right. Go ahead.
no,
Go
sorry. I
ahead.
was gonna say not to say that not having a little bit of validation or compliment here and there. It's nice. It's
It's
nice.
nice.
I'll
It's
say
nice for
that.
sure. Right. Right.
It's nice.
If like wholeheartedly, like if somebody helps you, feel free to compliment them because I think that makes them feel better. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like compliment people because at the end of the day, I think as much as you can spread good vibes,
Yes.
do it. For me personally, I think I
Yes.
could
That's
do it.
all I'm saying.
Right, right. And I think it's a
Yes.
constant process. It's a constant learning process. We could all do better
Yeah.
some way or the other. But I
Hmm.
think noticing the fact that you need to do better somewhere is already one
Yeah.
step ahead in terms of
Yeah.
getting closer to reaching that point where you're doing it for yourself and not doing it for seeking that validation.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
yeah.
I, let me add one more thing to
Go
that.
ahead. Go
But
for it. Go for
I,
it.
I, I think since I entered high school, like one of the things that like I always like had in my mind, like a goal, like for like until I'm dead, was like go out of your way and just like complimenting people, in the sense
Right.
of like, hey, you look really good, like a stranger on the street, like you look really good today, or I like your haircut, or I like these shoes, or blah 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 blah. Because like there's not a worst that could happen. You know what I mean? Because like
Mm-hmm.
you're only just complimenting them and you're just making their day a little bit brighter.
Right.
And I just remember hearing something from a video or an article or something that I read, and it was just like, you know, a lot of people, you never know what they're going through. This kind of dark, but like you could be walking down the street and you see someone and they could potentially be contemplating suicide. And for someone to be like, you have a really beautiful smile, or in some and I always feel this. I can always feel like someone's like energy and like their presence, and I'll be like, I don't know, you just really give off like really like happy vibes, or like you just like a positive vibes, or just complimenting them, like it could immediately change their day. And that person who's contemplating suicide is like, oh my gosh, someone noticed me, like this whole time no one's noticed me, I felt really neglected. And like one word, one sentence can change that person's life, and create a new outlook of life for them. And so like I feel like I've always gone into every day trying to if I see someone, or if I meet someone, just complimenting them or saying something to them that like
Mm-hmm.
is going to make their day a little bit brighter. Because why not? Like why wouldn't you?
Right.
Why wouldn't you say something nice to someone?
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. I think that's one thing that I could improve on personally, like from a personal perspective.
mhm.
But I can't. I'm not that good at taking compliments, and I'm also, I think, not that good at giving compliments. I've heard that quite a few times. Like a couple of people have always told me, like you're not that great at taking compliments. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of awkward that way. But
Which
yeah,
some people
like
are. Some people
yeah,
are.
yeah, but what you said about how giving someone a compliment can make a huge difference, and you
Yeah.
might not even know. I
Hmm.
think it
Or
goes a
even
long way.
smiling. Or
Right,
even smiling at someone.
right,
Yeah.
for sure. Because I remember this one time. You know who Alicia is, right? Who
Yes.
used to work at Jared's office. So this one time she gave me this compliment of saying like, if I was to ever get kidnapped, God forbid, the first person
Good
I'd call
start.
would probably yeah, God forbid, the first person that I'd call would be you. Um, and I was like, wow, like that is because like I think her sort of perspective in that sense was because I was involved with the GLA a lot, and I would try and go out of my way and do whatever I can to sort of help out when they needed the help. And
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily think much of it because I was like, okay, yeah, sure, like I have the time. If I'm not gonna do anything, I'm like, if I'm not doing anything, why not just go and help out over there, or sort of substitute for somebody else, or like do
Yeah.
this or do that, because otherwise I'd just be lying on my couch watching soccer or watching wrestling videos or whatnot. So might
Right.
as well, helping is probably better for everybody else.
Yeah, might as
So
well.
right, yeah,
Well,
might as well.
I will say you are a very respectable, honorable, very admirable person, which I would get why she would say that, because I would probably say the same thing.
I appreciate
I
it.
was
Thank
supposed to
you.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I think what I was trying to what I was trying to say from that was, if you can compliment somebody, you never know, it might stick with them for the rest of
Yeah.
their lives, you know. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that will definitely stick with me. Because this one other time, I mean, I'm not trying to make this about myself. I'm just trying
No,
to get.
please. You should talk about yourself a little.
I'm just trying to get to the bottom point of, or the bottom line of compliment people, and something that I'm trying to tell myself a lot. This one time at a barber shop after I got a haircut, um, the barber told to me, "Hey man, you have a good day today because you've done something. You've done something for my soul today." I was like, "Whoa! Like, what did I do? I was just having a conversation with you. I don't know like how that did anything for your soul, but well, yeah, I'm happy to help in some way, you know." So go out of your way to compliment people if you can. And Prateek, take note, compliment people more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. That's it. That's the crazy thing is like you never know what you're actually doing for someone. Like
hmm
when you're just having a conversation with them, or when you smile at them, or when you say something. Like you never know how that's going to affect their lives. And I think there's so much beauty in that unknown. You know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Transitioning away from talking about myself, you mentioned how a lot of service, like service for you, is sort of a way of channeling God's sort of. Um, I lost my train of thought there. I had a bit
You're
of a
good.
brain fart. You said that a lot of it is like sort of God channeling His energy through
Mhm.
you. What in that sense, how or what role has your belief system played in sort of being this person of service who's like willing to help anybody in any way possible?
I think my belief system is kind of like the steering wheel of my life. It really
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like how I navigate day in and day out of what I do. Do I always listen? No. And that's just the part of being human.
Right.
And I feel like ultimately, like granted, I was really lucky to grow up in church,
Mm-hmm.
and like have those values and morals instilled in me. Um, and so I think growing up, like hearing the stories and hearing, about the love of God, and like in all the services that were done in the Bible. And like I feel like honestly, now that I'm reflecting on it, like as you're asking me this question, is like a lot of those things, like I think subconsciously, like I took and like kind of manifested and made it a part of who I was or who I am, and like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be more like the people who went out of their way, people who were brave and bold and took charge, because um, we can't expect change to happen unless, we're willing to put forth that effort and, be the change we want to see in the world, like I know that's cliche and that's
Mm-hmm.
that's a quote, but like, I mean it really is, like I
Yeah.
can't expect, my roommate to create a change that I want to see, because
Right.
that's not on her priority list, or
Yeah.
my best friends, that's not on their list, that's on my
Right.
list, and my
Mm-hmm.
and if I have God being the like forefront of it and being kind of the center of it all, and he's leading me, then I feel like ultimately I don't have to worry about anyone else. I only have to worry about where he's taking me. um, and I know that sounds kind of funny, just because I'm always like, I'm an independent woman, I don't need anyone. But I feel like I wouldn't be that type of person without my beliefs and being in a relationship with God and having him guide me where I need to
Mm-hmm.
go, because ultimately we can't be dependent on ourselves. We have to, I
Right.
feel like we have to be dependent on someone, whatever you believe in it, you have to,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we are dependent on that person,
Yeah.
and so um I will say I think that is ultimately kind of how I view services, um I especially in a leadership role, I always like taking the story out of the Bible where it was Jesus washing his disciples' feet, and he's like the Messiah, he's Jesus, like like you are not gonna get on your feet and your hands and feet and wash these other 12 men's feet, like you're not gonna, why would you do
Why
that?
would
Why
you?
yeah, why are you doing this? You know, like
Right, right,
questioning
right.
it, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, that is an act of service, and that shows just how much God loves his children.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I wanted to instill that, like, no matter what role I'm in, I'm always here to service other people. It's not about me,
Right.
it's not about what I want, it's not about how I want things to be done. But like if I'm benefiting, or if I'm able to benefit the team or help them, you know, create and cultivate and become better by doing what I need to do, by stepping back, by not being the forefront, like you know what I mean, and being on my hands and my feet and having to, you know, work really hard in order to make sure my team shines, then that's what I need to do. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
can't just be the front face. I can't just be, you know, front and center and be like, yes, it's all about me, Teena. You know, like that's not how that works. You know,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I always look back at that story and I always just think, I'm like, wow, he really did that. Like
Right.
he really did that.
Right.
and it
Right.
and it always just, I mean, every time I think about it, it's just like, it's like, wow. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally speechless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where I've really cultivated who I am and how I am, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. You said how a lot of it is like him acting through you. How is
Mm-hmm.
that humbling as a person? Because I think a lot of the times we can get too full of ourselves as people, and I
Mm-hmm.
think there's nothing. I don't want to say that it's wrong in any way, because we all, it's human. It's a human tendency
Right. Oh,
where
of
we
course.
make ourselves the center of the world, our world, or the world for that
Yeah.
matter. um, how does that sense of knowing that what you're doing is through him, or through any religious figure that anybody follows, how is that humbling to you as a person?
I feel like I feel like I don't even recognize that, like, how do I put this in like the right words? I feel like I don't recognize it being as like an opportunity for me to showcase anything. Does that make sense? So it for me, it's like, not that I'm being humble, but not that I'm showing. I just feel like I'm being me,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like I said, he is just working through me, and like it's just like I don't even know how to explain that really. I don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
being humble,
Mm-hmm.
which that sounds bad.
No, no, no.
But
But I
I
get what you're
don't feel
saying.
like, yeah, but I don't feel like I'm not trying to show off or anything.
Right.
I'm just
Mm-hmm.
I just want to do what I feel like is right, and I just
Yeah.
want to do what I feel like I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, I just hope that, like, that ultimately it's God who is telling me what to do, and he is making sure, like, I'm not steering off of the path, and if I am, that's from my own doing, my own faults. So I kind of didn't answer the question, but
No,
it's,
I think you got there.
yeah.
Well, I guess like now that I'm thinking about it retrospectively, I think um, what I was trying to get at was I think it helps to know, or it helps to sort of understand that you are not the center of the world, and that there is something above you that sort
Yes.
of and you're sort of the channel for
Hmm.
the things that the force above us sort of wants to put out to the world. I don't know if I framed that properly, but I felt like basically what I was trying to say was I think that in itself, understanding that there is a force above us, even if you're not a religious person, I think understanding that, like, nature for that matter, the air that we breathe, all of these things are things that we have no control over, and the fact that we have those things is sort of keeping us alive, and I think that is very humbling in itself.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, uh, from that sense of
Yes.
being humble.
Yes. I see what you're
um,
saying.
yeah, yeah, but anyway, we're learning to ask questions.
Okay.
um, yeah. um,
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
right.
It also could be the way I'm like comprehending it.
Yeah, yeah, fair. That's fair. That's fair. But ask better questions, Prateek. Just kidding. Anyway, we're gonna transition into like the last section of the podcast, and we're gonna go to the segment called Bish
Okay.
Bash Bosh. Now, the name of the segment might sound quite random. Right, there we go. It is quite random.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Just
As
backstory
it
for the
should
name.
be. As it should be.
Right, right. The backstory to the name. So I watch a lot of soccer content, and because I like soccer, and a lot of that content is based off of the UK, out of the UK. And this one time I was watching a person sort of kick a ball, and they made this sound Bosch, and I was like, okay, that's a weird sound to make. And then like we use the word bash, like you see the word bash somewhere in like comics or whatever. And
Yeah.
one day they just clicked like bish bash bosh, and I was like, cool, let's make that a segment.
There we go.
So here we are.
I love it. I love
So
it.
basically, bish bash bosh. I need to learn to say it a little properly. Is gonna be a segment where I will give you 5 words, and these 5 words are
Okay.
recurring words that I'm gonna ask everybody who's gonna be on this podcast in the future. And I want you to answer these words, or like give the first prompts that you have in your head, or like the first 3
Okay.
prompts rather. Like for example, if I was to say God, what are the first 3 words that come to your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It could be 3 words, or it could be
Okay.
3 phrases. So you'd have to
Okay.
answer them in 3 words or 3 phrases. So the first word is differences. What are the 3 things that come to your mind when I say differences?
Differences. I think of identity.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that be like our cultural identity, just like who we are, like our personalities. Differences, I think of funny enough, I think of like our organization, like ISA, and like our like different thought processes.
Right.
And then differences, I think of individuals.
Fair. The next word is nuance.
Nuance.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a synonym? I
Sure.
feel like I
It's
need to like.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because like a lot of the times, I think we can think that the world is just black and white, but then there's a lot of gray. There is a lot of in
Okay.
between. So I would
Right.
say that nuance is maybe like in between. So
In
when I
between.
say
Okay.
in between or nuance, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, listen, ACT didn't really kick in for me. Um, in between, I feel like
Okay.
cultural, because we literally, we
Yeah.
literally said that. Um, I think of, man, what else do I think of? Like
It's okay.
literally,
Take
like I
your
had a
time.
brain fart and just can't
It's
think
all
of
good. No
anything.
worries.
Um, I feel like stages of life, like
Mm-hmm.
we're in between. I think especially like you and I, we're about to get in between like that,
Mm-hmm.
graduating soon and like where are we gonna go next and stuff
Yeah.
like that. In between, I feel like I don't know. What else do I think of? I don't think I have anything else.
It's okay.
There's no.
No
That's
worries.
that's all
It's
that I
all
have. Yeah.
it's all good. No worries. No worries. We can move on to the next word.
Okay.
Learning. What are the 3 things that come to your mind when I say the word learning?
I think of people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think of like education, um, and I think of progress.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like people who are willing to educate themselves, there's progress, um, and I feel like if we were able to learn, we're able to we're able to become a better society. Let's put it that way.
Fair. I agree 100%. Um, the fourth word is empathy. What are the 3 things that come to your mind when I say empathy?
Uh, my career.
Okay.
I feel
Fair. You have
like
to be
that.
very empathetic as a person to be a counselor. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I think of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think of love.
Beautiful. The last word for Bish Bash Bosh is similarities. What comes to your mind when I say similarities? The word similarities.
I think of differences,
Okay. Interesting.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think our differences help us align, kind of like what our similarities are too. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like we talk so much about our differences and like who we are and like where we grow up, but then we come to find out like a lot of our similarities and like kind of like, you know, like you're me, but like from like Nebraska, you know, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Right.
like you're
The
like,
Nebraska version of Tina.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like, I feel like there's like, I think of similarities as also differences.
Okay.
And I feel like now that I think about it, differences as similarities. So
Mm-hmm. So you're
yeah.
gonna okay.
Similarities. I think of friendship,
Mm-hmm.
or relationships.
Right.
And then similarities, I also think of goodness. I
Cool.
think, yeah, yeah. I just think that I feel like your relationships and like where you grow and like what you guys find as similarities in your lives or like views or stuff, they help you grow and just kind of like you feel good about your relationship and you feel good about like your friendships or whatever it may be. So
Cool. Cool. That's a
yeah.
nice way to close Big Bang. I can't even say it. Damn. Bish Bash Bosh.
You got
For
this.
right, thank you for the second episode of this
Perfect.
podcast. Thank you. So the reason why I'm saying Big Bash is because there
Yes.
is this cricketing league in Australia that's called Big Bash. So when I'm
Mm,
trying to say the word bash, like the word
gotcha.
big comes out first. So I have to sort of program my mind to be like,
That makes
no, not
sense.
big, go bish. Bish, bash,
It's
bosh.
Bish.
Bish,
But
bash,
like Bish
bosh.
also sounds like
Yeah, that's what I thought about that. But then I was like, you know what? I think people might not think about that after I say the word bash and bosh. So fingers crossed.
Bash. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I love the name. I'm here for it.
Thank you. Thank you. To
Yeah.
close off this episode, I have two more questions. Um, the first one
Yes.
being for someone who probably doesn't associate with the same things that you associate with in life, how would you relate to them, or how could you relate to them if, like, for example, if you guys are the total opposite, how could you still relate to them in some way?
I think kindness is always um, a path that all of us want to walk on. And I think when you can be kind to someone, they'll be kind back to you. At
Hmm.
least that's the hope. And so I think regardless of all the differences that we face or all the differences that we have between each other, I think if we can be kind to one another, I think ultimately there can be a friendship. I think ultimately there can be some type of relationship, and I think things can work out.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for the last question of the second episode, if you were to leave our listeners and watchers with a positive thought or a positive quote, what would that be? Leave us with a positive quote to close us
Positive
off.
quote. Um, Maybe I'll leave it with this. What is it that you want people to remember you from? You know, when you leave someone's house or when you leave the earth or when you've just finished a conversation, how do you want them to view you? You know, do you want to come off as a very kind-hearted, loving person, or do you want to come off as someone who
It's rude.
is rude or like or an optimistic person, like how do you want to come off to the world, and how you
Hmm.
want your legacy to be built.
Hmm. I think that is deep, and I think that is a great way to end the second episode of Perspective Platoon. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Tina, for
of
being a part of
course.
the second episode. I
Thank
really appreciate
you.
you wanting to come on and talk about a lot of, I think, deep stuff and stuff that's very personal to you. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time to do
Yes.
that. And thank you to everybody who's listening and watching. See you guys next time.
Yes.
Thank you for watching this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Tina on her social media handles and share in the comment section some of the things that you could relate to that we spoke about on this episode. Also, make sure to check out some of the sources of information and content that we spoke about on this episode in the description section below. Like, share, and subscribe, and follow Random Relatability on all social media accounts. And thank you once again for joining in on the conversation. Stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know. Random Relatability might just be around the corner.